Caroline was sitting alone in the spacious school auditorium, where the late afternoon sunlight filtered through the tall windows, casting golden beams onto the polished wooden floor. She stared absent-mindedly at the empty stage, lost in her own thoughts. Her heart, once filled with certainty about her family, was now torn apart by the revelation that had shaken her world. The silence was broken when Jackson, a perceptive classmate with a warm smile, approached slowly. He immediately noticed Caroline's somber expression and the sadness that hung over her like a dark cloud. "Caroline," Jackson murmured gently, getting closer to her. "Something's wrong. You seem distant. What happened?" Caroline blinked a few times, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. She looked at Jackson with vacant eyes, hesitant to share her family's dark secrets, but something about the way he approached her made her feel like she could trust him. "Jackson," Caroline began with a trembling voice, "I found out my father has been lying to me for years." The words escaped her lips like a long-held secret. Jackson sat down next to Caroline, placing his backpack on the floor. His face displayed genuine concern as he listened attentively. "I'm here, Caroline. Do you want to share what happened?" Caroline pulled a crumpled photo from her backpack and held it in her trembling hands. It was a picture of her at the age of 6, standing beside a smiling man, her father. "My father has been lying to me about my mother," she said, her voice quivering. "How long has he been lying to me? I want to understand why Daddy did this." Jackson looked at the photo and then at Caroline. "Sometimes people do things we don't fully understand, Caroline," he offered words of comfort. "There may be reasons we don't know." Hours later, the two of them met at a cozy nearby cafe. Caroline shared more details with Jackson, delving into the complexity of her situation. "I never had a mother," she confessed. "I grew up only with my father and my grandmother. I always believed my mother was sick and passed away, but I recently found out she abandoned me." Jackson, while listening attentively, gently placed his hand on Caroline's. "Caroline," he said with compassion, "maybe your father had his reasons. Before jumping to conclusions, perhaps you should talk to him." Caroline nodded, grateful for Jackson understanding. However, the question about her family still loomed over her as she prepared to have a difficult conversation with her father and possibly seek answers about her absent mother. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and pink as Caroline headed to her grandmother's house. She knew that there, she would find answers before speaking to her father about her recent discovery. The residence, a modest cottage surrounded by a well-tended garden, exuded a sense of warmth and familiarity. It was the place where Caroline had spent countless happy afternoons in her childhood, listening to her grandmother's stories and receiving unconditional love. The old wooden door creaked softly as Caroline opened it and stepped into the living room. Her grandmother, a silver-haired lady with a gentle smile, was seated in her favorite armchair, delicately embroidering. They locked eyes and Caroline knew it was time to open her heart. "Grandma," Caroline began, "I need to talk to you about something important." Her voice trembled and she approached slowly, taking a seat on a stool beside her grandmother. Her grandmother set her work aside, concern reflecting in her gaze. "Of course, my dear," she replied, her voice sweet. "What's troubling you?" Caroline took a deep breath, feeling the words ready to spill out but also hesitant to share the painful revelation. "I found out that my father lied to me about my mother," she began, looking down before meeting her grandmother's understanding gaze. Her grandmother furrowed her brow, surprise and concern mixing on her face. "Sweetheart, that must have been difficult for you to discover. But what do you want to know?" Caroline explained the situation in detail, recounting her belief that her mother had been ill and had passed away, only to recently discover that she had abandoned her. Her grandmother listened attentively, her face showing compassion as the story unfolded. When Caroline finished telling her story, her grandmother sighed deeply. "Dear Caroline, there's something you need to know," her grandmother began, holding Caroline's trembling hands. "Your mother, Annette, didn't leave of her own accord. Your father, Timothy, became a difficult person to live with over time. Annette loved you deeply, but the strain and unhappiness in their marriage led her to leave the family. Her grandmother's words echoed in the room, filling the space with profound sadness. Caroline felt a lump in her throat as she processed this revelation. The truth was even more complex than she could have imagined. She loved me even so. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. Her grandmother held Caroline's hands firmly, looking deeply into her eyes. Yes, dear, she loved you more than anything in the world. She had to make a difficult choice, and it wasn't due to a lack of love for you. Caroline thanked her grandmother, her feelings a mix of relief and sorrow. She stood up and, before leaving, picked up a photo of her mother from a nearby shelf. It was an image of Annette with a radiant smile, holding Caroline when she was just a baby. The photo was now a precious keepsake, a connection to the mother she had lost. With the truth in her heart, Caroline left her grandmother's house, determined to confront her father and resolve her family's issues while holding the photo of her mother tenderly, a reminder of the love that had existed even in the toughest circumstances. Caroline felt a growing determination as she prepared to confront her father and seek answers to the many questions that plagued her mind. It was a sunny Saturday morning, and the warmth of the sun filtered through the curtains of her window, filling the room with a golden glow. She was dressed simply, but every step she took towards the front door seemed charged with purpose. The moment she turned the doorknob of the entrance was a turning point in her life. She was resolved to confront her father, Timothy, about the lie that had enveloped her for years, and perhaps search for her mother, Annette. What awaited her was a sea of uncertainties, but Caroline was willing to face the unknown. However, before she could take this significant step, her phone rang. It was Jackson, her friend to whom she had confided and shared the secret she had recently discovered. He was inviting her for a walk along the lake, a peaceful place where both could relax and talk. Jackson's cheerful voice on the phone made her smile, and she agreed to the outing, temporarily postponing her quest for answers. The lake was a picturesque retreat, surrounded by majestic trees and crystal-clear waters that reflected the cloudless blue sky. Jackson and Caroline walked along the shore, their steps accompanied by the gentle sound of water hitting the rocks. The air was imbued with the refreshing scent of nature, and birds sang soft melodies in the trees. The two young friends shared joyful moments as they explored their surroundings. They laughed, exchanged childhood stories, and discussed their dreams for the future. Caroline's smile was genuine, and her heart warmed with the sense of peace that Jackson brought her. As they sat together by the lakeside, watching the gentle waves and the sun's reflection on the water, Jackson looked at Caroline with affection. "You seem more relaxed here," he said softly, his hand finding hers. Caroline nodded, the breeze caressing her hair. "It's true. This place is magical." She gazed at the lake, her mind momentarily distracted from the family concerns that had been weighing on her. "But there's still something I need to face, Jackson. An issue that still lingers over me." Jackson looked at Caroline with curiosity and empathy. "What is it, Caroline?" The serene lake and their heartfelt conversations were a reminder that even when facing the toughest challenges, love and friendship can be our refuge in the midst of the storm. Twilight cast orange and golden hues over the city as Caroline bid farewell to Jackson in the park following their pleasant lakeside walk. Their knowing smiles and intertwined hands revealed the deep connection they had built over the week. However, Caroline knew that an impending revelation loomed over her like a shadow. As she walked through the streets, she noticed a middle-aged woman approaching. Her heart skipped a beat when their eyes met. The woman seemed strangely familiar, like a distant memory finally surfacing. Caroline came to a sudden stop, unable to contain the overwhelming emotion. "Annette?" Caroline whispered, almost unable to believe her own eyes. The middle-aged woman halted upon hearing her name being called, her eyes locking with Caroline's eyes. Slowly Caroline approached the woman, tears welling up in her eyes. She was just steps away from reuniting with the mother who had been mysteriously absent from her life for so long. But as fate loves to weave ironies, a series of unexpected events unfolded. First, a strong gust of wind rustled the leaves of the trees, creating a curtain of frenetic movement between mother and daughter. Then a sudden rain began to fall, icy drops hitting Caroline's face and obscuring her vision. She reached out, trying to reach Annette, but the elements seemed to conspire against the long-awaited reunion. However, Jackson, concerned about letting Caroline go home alone, tried to accompany her and as he approached, observed the scene with curiosity and concern. He quickly approached and asked, "Caroline, what's happening?" Trying to make sense of the unusual scene before him, Caroline, with a choked voice and tears mixed with rain on her face, turned to Jackson and said, "Jackson, this is Annette, my mother." Her voice carried a mix of joy and sorrow as the reunion she had longed for was being thwarted by the twist of fate. Jackson was surprised, his face reflecting a mix of shock and understanding. He couldn't believe he was witnessing Caroline's reunion with her mother, an event that was so crucial to Caroline's story. But as the rain fell harder and the wind carried the words away, the distance between Caroline and Annette seemed to grow rather than diminish. Caroline called her mother name once more, but nature, ruthless in its irony, seemed determined to keep mother and daughter apart. With a heavy sigh, Caroline turned to Jackson and explained, "Jackson, this is a moment I've waited for my whole life, but it seems the universe has other plans." Her gaze met Annette's, but the distance between them appeared insurmountable in that moment. Jackson, seeing the sadness in Caroline's eyes, gently held her shoulders and said, "Caroline, you've found your mother. That's amazing, even if the moment isn't perfect. You'll have time to reconnect and sort things out." With a heavy heart, Caroline looked at Jackson, gratitude shining in her eyes. She knew that the reunion with her mother was just the beginning of a journey filled with challenges. But for now, she was determined to face whatever destiny had in store, knowing that she had Jackson by her side to support her. Annette and Caroline embraced, and Annette shared her address so that Caroline could visit her with more time to talk. The tension that had been hanging in the air for so long was finally reaching its climax. The pivotal moment of the story was approaching with steady and decisive steps. Caroline was determined to uncover the truth, no matter what she would find. The weeks that had passed since the thwarted meeting with her mother, Annette, had served as a test of her resilience and determination. Finally, after careful planning, Caroline managed to arrange a meeting with her mother. The late afternoon sun cast golden hues over the landscape as she approached Annette's small house. Caroline's heart pounded in her chest as she rang the doorbell. The door opened slowly, and there stood Annette, her mother, with eyes filled with surprise and emotion. They stared intensely at each other for a moment, as if connected by an invisible thread that had kept them bound for so long. "Annette," Caroline began, her voice trembling. "It's really you." Annette nodded with tears in her eyes, unable to contain her emotions. "Yes, my daughter, I've missed you all these years." They embraced tightly, as if the years of separation disappeared in an instant. Words were not necessary in that moment. It was the language of the heart that spoke loudest. Later, sitting in Annette's small living room, mother and daughter shared their stories. Annette recounted the years of loneliness and longing, how she had tried to stay informed about Caroline's life from a distance, without interfering in what she believed was best. Caroline listened attentively, her eyes filled with understanding. The truth emerged like a bright light, dispelling the shadows of the past. She realized that her grandmother had spoken the truth, that her mother had not abandoned her willingly but out of love and concern for her well-being. With the truth revealed, Caroline shifted her focus to the next step in her journey of reconciliation. She planned to confront her father, Timothy, and resolve the family issues that had accumulated over the years. Her determination was stronger than ever, driven by the need to bring the truth to light and find a way to heal the wounds of the past. Upon returning home that day, Caroline had a conversation with her father Timothy. He confessed that their marriage was falling apart, and in a heated argument Annette had left to cope with the situation. Timothy had told Caroline that Annette had died as it would make it easier to forget the whole story. In the end, Caroline understood both sides, and with Jackson's support, it became easier to navigate this new path that destiny had provided. As time passed, Caroline's relationship with Jackson was also flourishing. He tirelessly supported her in her quest for the truth and stood by her at every step of the journey. Their relationship had grown and strengthened, and together they faced the challenges that life had thrown their way. Caroline approached her mother one day and looked at Annette, her mother, with gratitude and love in her eyes. She knew she had a long road ahead, but now she had a family, as Timothy had accepted Caroline's reconnecting with Annette, and she had a partner who would support her at every turn. Caroline's story was far from over, but at this moment she felt ready to face the future with courage and determination, with truth and love as her guides. Now she knew she had a long road ahead to reconnect with her mother and make up for all the lost years. What would you do in Caroline's situation? Please tell us in the comments. The next story that's appearing on your screen will also touch your heart. A big hug, and until the next story. Thank you.